Creatine is having its moment. Sales are up nearly 72% in the last year. Women are taking it, older adults are taking it, people who have never stepped inside a gym are taking it. And for good reason. The research is genuinely impressive and has expanded well beyond muscle performance into brain health, mood, cognitive speed, and healthy aging. I'm Dr. Scott Scher, and welcome back to Cellular Truth. But there is something the creatine conversation is missing. It is the thing I keep running into in clinical practice. Creatine works through a specific cellular mechanism that most people taking it do not understand. And that mechanism has a prerequisite that nobody in the supplement industry is talking about. Without that prerequisite, the results are inconsistent at best and absent at worst. Here's a clinical observation that I'm going to frame here in this video. I see creatine working beautifully in patients who are not athletes, people taking it for brain fog, energy floor, mood instability, cognitive clarity. The results in that population, when it works, are genuinely striking. But I also see it fail. And when I look at the patients who it's not landing on, the pattern is consistent. Their sympathetic nervous system is still running at high activation, sympathetic spiraling. The cellular alarm is still on, and as long as the alarm is running, there's a specific reason creatine cannot do what it's supposed to do, even though the supplement itself is completely fine. And if you stay with me, the reason involves one of the most important energy systems in your body that nobody explains clearly. And I'm going to walk you through that completely in the next few minutes. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover in this video. First, what creatine actually is and what it actually does at the cellular level. Not the gym version of the story, the real version. Second, why it works beyond the gym, including some brain research that was just published this year, genuinely surprised actually me as well as my colleagues. Third, where the research ends and my clinical experience begins. And fourth, the specific reason creatine underperforms in a population that needs it most, and what has to happen first for this supplement to do its job. The last part in this piece I have not heard anyone say before. Okay, let's take a deep dive here. So creatine is one of the most well-studied supplements in existence. Over 1,000 human clinical trials, decades of safety data, and a track record in athletic performance that is essentially unmatched by any other legal supplement. It's kind of crazy, right? And yet the conversation about it in 2026 is still mostly happening in the gym. The fitness industry owns a narrative it has for a long time. That is changing though, right? The framing is almost always the same though. Take creatine to lift more, run faster, recover quicker. That narrative is not wrong. It's just dramatically incomplete. Because what the research has been quietly showing, and what a major new scientific review published in 2026 has now assembled in one place, is that creatine is doing something to the brain and the body that goes considerably beyond what most people buying it understand. And once you understand the cellular mechanism behind how it works, you start to see why it matters for the exact population this entire series has been built around. People whose cells are running on depleted energy, whose alarms who's been on for too long, and whose standard interventions keep falling short. Let's build this from the ground up because the mechanism is genuinely worth understanding, and it is simpler than it sounds. So your body actually produces creatine naturally, mainly in your liver and kidneys, using 3 amino acids, which are just the building blocks of proteins. Most of it, about 95%, gets shipped to your muscle cells. There, the cells convert it into something called phosphocreatine. Here's where it gets important. Your cells run on a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Think of ATP as the battery inside every cell. When a cell does work, any work, whether that is a muscle contraction, a thought, a heartbeat, it burns through ATP. When the ATP runs out, the cell has to recharge it. Think of it like a phone battery. The mitochondria, the energy generators inside every cell, are the charger plugged into the wall. Slow but reliable. The phosphocreatine system is the portable power bank. Fast, immediate, does not need to be plugged in. When you need energy right now for a sprint, a heavy lift, an intense cognitive task, the phosphocreatine system kicks in first and buys the mitochondria the time they need to catch up. Creatine supplementation fills that power bank. More phosphocreatine means faster ATP energy regeneration, more energy available on demand, and less cellular strain during high demand moments. Of course, this is the gym story, but here is the part the gym story leaves out. The brain uses roughly 20% of your body's total energy, which is extraordinary given that it represents just about 2% of your body weight. It is one of the most energy-hungry organs you have, and it runs almost entirely on ATP, which means the phosphocreatine system, the fast recharge power bank, matters enormously in the brain, not just the muscle. What the research has been showing increasingly and consistently is that creatine supplements raise phosphocreatine levels in brain tissue measurably in ways that improve cognitive performance under stress. A 2024 study found creatine improved cognitive performance during sleep deprivation, one of the most reliable ways to stress the brain's energy system. A systematic review across 16 randomized control studies found significant improvements in memory, attention, and processing speed in healthy adults. And then there's the Alzheimer's research published in 2026, which is what I want to highlight specifically because it illustrates the cellular energy argument more clearly than any other finding. A multi-placebo-controlled trial gave Alzheimer's patients, early Alzheimer's, 5 grams of creatine daily for 12 weeks. Brain phosphocreatine levels increased by 10 to 15% on brain scans. The intervention group showed approximately 30% slower cognitive decline versus placebo. 30%. The reason researchers researchers think this works is precise. Mitochondrial dysfunction, Alzheimer's, creates a bioenergetic crisis in the brain cells. They cannot make enough ATP. The phosphocreatine system, which bypasses the mitochondria entirely, can partially compensate for this deficit. Creatine feeds back the back door when the front door is damaged. So this phrase, feeds the back door when the front door is damaged, is the most important sentence in this entire video, because it is exactly what creatine is doing in a much broader population than just Alzheimer's patients. And it's why the clinical results I'm seeing go well beyond what the gym narrative predicted. Now, here is where I need to be very precise about what the research has and has not established, because creatine conversation tends towards the overselling. It has many things that get very, very popular. And I want to go actually in the other direction. The research is strong on athletic performance, very strong, decades of replicated trials. The research on cognitive benefits is promising, but it's still early. The Alzheimer's findings are striking, but from a specific impaired population. The healthy adult cognitive data is real, but the effect sizes are modest, and the optimal dose for brain effects, likely higher than the standard 5 grams, is still being worked out. The research on why creatine fails in certain people, specifically people with chronic sympathetic nervous system activation, does not yet exist in formal published form. This is my clinical observation, and I'm seeing it all the time. So this is really what I'm going to be talking about next, which is the mechanisms as to why it may not be working. They're grounded in published biology. It's a clinical pattern. The sympathetic nervous system activates. The patient responds poorly to creatine regardless of dose. It's actually what I'm seeing in practice more than I would actually believe. I'm connecting those dots here. They haven't been connected formally in the literature yet. Let's see how this all rolls, right? So here is what the research does not capture yet, though, and what I keep seeing in clinic. Creatine works extraordinarily well in patients I would have not predicted to work in. Non-athletes, sedentary people, middle-aged women who've never touched a barbell, people coming in for brain fog, low energy, floors, mood still instability, difficulty thinking clearly. When creatine lands in this population, it lands quickly and meaningfully. Energy stability, clearer thinking, and a floor that stops dropping under stress. But I also see it not land. And when I look at the patients where the results are absent or minimal, the pattern is consistent. Their sympathetic nervous system is still running at high activation. Here's what I mean by that and why it matters for creatine specifically. Your sympathetic nervous system is your body's fight or flight nervous system. When it is chronically activated, running at high output because of ongoing stress, unresolved threat, a nervous system that has lost its floor, it does something specific to how your cells use energy. Think of your cell under chronic sympathetic activation like a factory that has been put on emergency lockdown. The power bank is being refilled, creatine is doing its job, the phosphocreatine is there, but the factory is not running normal procedure. It is running security protocols. Every unit of energy that comes in gets redirected toward the energy emergency response. The lights are on, the alarm is running, the actual work the factory was supposed to do, cognitive performance, mood stability, cellular repair, keeps getting deprioritized because the emergency has not been called off. This is the cell danger response connection, which I've talked about in previous videos. Your cell's own internal alarm system. It stays active when the sympathetic nervous system is chronically engaged. And when the CDR is active, the energy gets routed from the recovery and towards defense instead. Creatine can fill the power bank, but it cannot tell the factory to stand down. The patients where creatine is not landing are not creatine non-responders. They are people whose cells are redirecting energy, every unit of available energy, towards an alarm that has not been turned off yet. The supplement is fine. The sequencing is wrong. What I mean by that is we have to optimize energy production first, detoxify the system, downregulate energy, downregulate the stress response, and then creatine starts landing. Okay, so in closing, here are the ways to apply this practically in the sequence that actually matters. If your sympathetic activation is low to moderate, you're stressed but recovering, sleep reasonably, not in a chronic survival state, creatine is genuinely an excellent tool right now. Start with 3 to 5 grams daily of creatine monohydrate. Consistency matters more than timing. Give it 4 to 6 weeks before evaluating results. If you've never used it before, a loading phase may be helpful up to 20 grams for 5 to 7 days, but always talk to your practitioner to make sure this is safe. The cognitive energy floor benefits tend to appear more gradually than the performance benefits, so be patient. If your sympathetic activation is quite high, if the floor has dropped, as I was alluding to before, if nothing's been sticking, creatine is still worth taking. It's definitely worth taking, but addressing the baseline first, energy first. Remember, optimize energy production, downregulate the nervous system, consistent sleep, daily movement, regular stress. The safety signal your nervous system needs before it will allow the cellular energy to be used for anything other than the alarm is absolutely essential, okay? Safety will make everything land better, not just creatine, but every vitamin, every mineral, every nutrient that you take, okay? And safety requires energy. Energy is mitochondrial energy, the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors that you need to optimize your cellular production, optimize your energy production, will make it so that creatine and other things are going to land. Creatine feeds the power bank, okay? The nervous system decides what to do with the power. If the alarm is running, the power goes to the alarm. That is the sentence I want to leave you with. Creatine is one of the most powerful, safe, and underutilized tools available for cellular energy support. It works through a mechanism that does not require fully functional mitochondria, which makes it uniquely valuable for people whose cells are struggling. But it requires a nervous system that is ready to receive the signal of what is being offered here. Give your cells the energy, give your nervous system the signal that the emergency is over in that order, and everything is going to land better. better. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Cellular Truth. We'll see you next time.